Welcome to the Movie Site channel. Spider-Man has swung through more cinematic eras than any other superhero, each one redefining what the genre could achieve. From Sam Raimi's groundbreaking practical effects trilogy to Mark Webb's ambitious but flawed reboot, from Tom Holland's MCU integration to the animated masterpiece of the Spider-Verse, every iteration brought something new. This video breaks down how each era shaped superhero filmmaking, what worked, what didn't, and why Spider-Man remains the most adaptable hero in cinema history. Let's dive in.
Spider-Man. This is where it all began. The film that proved superhero movies could be blockbuster events with genuine heart. Directed by the visionary Sam Raimi, Spider-Man arrived at a time when comic book films were still finding their footing. Raimi, known for his Evil Dead horror comedy roots, brought a kinetic, comic book panel visual style that felt revolutionary. The iconic score by Danny Elfman became instantly legendary, and the practical effects from the Goblin's glider to the web swinging gave the film a tangible, grounded feel that CGI-heavy films often lack.
Peter Parker, Tobey Maguire, is a shy, awkward high schooler bitten by a radioactive spider, granting him incredible powers. But as his Uncle Ben, Cliff Robertson, famously says, with great power comes great responsibility. The premise follows Peter's journey from bullied teen to reluctant hero as he faces the maniacal Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe, a villain who is, tragically, the father of his best friend. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film set the template for the modern superhero origin story, balancing action, romance, and tragedy, and proved that audiences would embrace a hero who was as vulnerable as he was powerful. Without it, the MCU wouldn't exist.
Spider-Man 2. Often hailed as the greatest superhero sequel ever made, Spider-Man 2 deepened everything the first film established. Sam Raimi returned, this time with even more confidence, delivering a film that wasn't just about punching villains, it was about the crushing weight of being a hero. The practical effects were pushed further, especially in the legendary train sequence, which remains one of the most thrilling action set pieces in cinema history. The score by Danny Elfman soared to even greater heights.
Peter Parker is struggling. He can't pay rent, he's failing his classes, and his love Mary Jane, Kirsten Dunst, is engaged to someone else. The weight of being Spider-Man is literally causing him to lose his powers. Meanwhile, brilliant but unstable scientist Otto Octavius, Alfred Molina, becomes the tragic villain Doc Ock, whose mechanical arms are fused to his body after a catastrophic experiment. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film proved that superhero movies could be character dramas first and action spectacles second. It showed that the hero's internal conflict is just as compelling as any external threat, a lesson that every subsequent Spider-Man film and the entire MCU would carry forward. Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3, the film that tried to do too much and became a cautionary tale. Sam Raimi returned for the trilogy capper, but studio interference and a packed roster of villains, Sandman, Venom, and New Goblin, led to a messy, overstuffed narrative. Still, it's not without its merits. The practical effects for Sandman, Thomas Hayden Church, were groundbreaking, and the symbiote suit brought a dark, edgy aesthetic that fans had craved.
Peter Parker is finally riding high. He's beloved by the city and his relationship with Mary Jane is solid. But when an alien symbiote bonds with him, it amplifies his arrogance and darker impulses, turning him into a vengeful, self-absorbed version of himself. Meanwhile, he faces the escaped convict Flint Marko, Sandman, who may have been involved in Uncle Ben's death, and rival photographer Eddie Brock, Topher Grace, who becomes the monstrous Venom. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film served as a hard lesson in franchise management. Too many villains, too many subplots, and too much studio meddling can derail even the best creative vision. It proved that superhero films need restraint and a clear focus, a lesson Marvel Studios would take to heart.
The Amazing Spider-Man. The reboot nobody asked for, but did it deserve the hate? Directed by Mark Webb, yes, the 500 Days of Summer guy, The Amazing Spider-Man arrived just 5 years after Raimi's trilogy ended, leading to widespread franchise fatigue. The film attempted a darker, more grounded tone, leaning into the untold story of Peter's parents and their mysterious disappearance. The web swinging was more fluid, thanks to improved CGI, and the suit was sleek and modern.
Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield, is a brooding skateboarding outsider who discovers his father's hidden research after being bitten by a genetically modified spider. He becomes Spider-Man to hunt down his uncle's killer, crossing paths with Dr. Kurt Connors, reinventions, a scientist who transforms into the Lizard. Why it's essential to this evolution? This reboot proved that simply redoing the origin story wasn't enough. Audiences needed a fresh angle. Garfield's charm and the chemistry with Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy were undeniable highlights, but the film's grim tone and convoluted mystery plot felt like a step backward. It taught studios that rebooting too soon risks alienating fans who aren't ready to let go of the previous iteration.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the film that killed the franchise and unintentionally paved the way for the MCU. Directed again by Mark Webb, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a beautiful mess. Dazzling visuals, incredible web-swinging sequences, and one of the most heartbreaking moments in Spider-Man history, Gwen Stacy's death. But it's also a textbook example of franchise building gone wrong, cramming in multiple villains, Electro, Green Goblin, Rhino, and teasing a Sinister Six spin-off that never materialized.
Peter Parker is now confident as Spider-Man, but his relationship with Gwen, Emma Stone, is strained by his promise to her dying father to stay away. Meanwhile, he faces Max Dillon, Jamie Foxx, an overlooked Oscorp employee who becomes the electric-powered Electro, and his childhood friend Harry Osborn, Dane DeHaan, who transforms into the Green Goblin. Why it's essential to this evolution. This film became the poster child for over-ambitious franchise planning. When you prioritize setting up future movies over telling a coherent story, audiences can tell. Its failure led Sony to strike a historic deal with Marvel Studios, bringing Spider-Man into the MCU and changing the character's cinematic trajectory forever.
Spider-Man: Homecoming. The real game changer. It marked Spider-Man's official entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and director John Watts delivered a breath of fresh air. Marvel Studios made a bold choice. Skip the origin story entirely. No radioactive spider bite, no Uncle Ben death scene, just a kid already in costume trying to balance high school with superheroics. The tone was bright, funny, and grounded, leaning into the friendly neighborhood aspect of the character.
Peter Parker, Tom Holland, is a 15-year-old sophomore juggling homework, decathlon practice, and his desire to prove himself to Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. When he stumbles upon a criminal ring using advanced alien weaponry, he takes on the Vulture, Michael Keaton, a blue-collar villain with a surprisingly sympathetic motive. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film proved that audiences didn't need to see the origin again. By trusting that everyone already knew the basics, Marvel could dive straight into the character's present struggles, and by grounding Peter in high school realism, they made him the most relatable Spider-Man yet. It also cemented Tom Holland as the definitive live-action Spidey for a new generation.
Spider-Man: Far From Home. The first Spider-Man film set after the events of Avengers Endgame, Far From Home had the impossible task of following up the emotional devastation of Tony Stark's death. Directed again by John Watts, this film took Peter out of New York and dropped him into a European summer vacation, which of course goes horribly wrong. The action sequences were bigger, the visual effects more spectacular, and the stakes felt more global.
Peter Parker is trying to escape his superhero responsibilities, hoping to confess his feelings to MJ, Zendaya, during a school trip to Europe. But Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, recruits him to take on the Elementals, creatures of pure destruction, alongside the mysterious Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. Why it's essential to this evolution. This film explored the aftermath of a massive crossover event, showing how a single hero copes with grief and expectation. It also delivered one of the franchise's best twists. Mysterio's illusion sequences were pure visual poetry, and reminded audiences that Spider-Man's greatest enemy is often his own self-doubt. It set the stage for a darker, more personal third chapter.
Spider-Man: No Way Home, the multiverse event that broke the internet and box office records. Directed by John Watts, No Way Home is the culmination of 2 decades of Spider-Man cinema, bringing together Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland in a live-action crossover that fans had only dreamed of. The film was a love letter to every era of Spider-Man, weaving nostalgia with fresh emotional stakes. The CGI was state-of-the-art, but the heart came from the actors, especially the genuine camaraderie between the 3 Peter Parkers. Peter Parker's identity is exposed to the world, destroying his life and the lives of his loved ones. Desperate, he asks Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch, to cast a spell to make everyone forget. But it goes wrong, tearing open the multiverse and bringing villains from other realities into his world. Peter must help these villains, including Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Electro, while grappling with the ultimate sacrifice, losing everyone he loves to save the multiverse. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film proved that nostalgia, when handled with care, can be emotionally devastating and commercially unstoppable. It honored every previous iteration while giving Tom Holland's Peter his most tragic, defining moment, choosing loneliness to protect the world. It also opened the floodgates for multiverse storytelling in superhero cinema.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And now, the true masterpiece, the film that redefined what animated superhero movies could achieve. Directed by the trio of Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman, Into the Spider-Verse was a visual revolution, blending comic book aesthetics with cutting-edge animation to create a style that felt like a living, breathing graphic novel. The film won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature and is widely considered one of the greatest superhero films of all time, animated or otherwise.
The story follows Miles Morales, voiced by Shameik Moore, a Brooklyn teen who is bitten by a radioactive spider and gains powers, just as the villainous Kingpin, Liev Schreiber, opens a dimensional rift, pulling alternate versions of Spider-Man into Miles' universe. Miles must team up with a grizzled Peter B. Parker, Jake Johnson, a cynical Spider-Gwen, Haley Steinfeld, and other Spider people to save reality itself. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film proved that Spider-Man's legacy transcends Peter Parker. It introduced a new hero, Miles Morales, who resonated with audiences for his relatability, cultural authenticity, and coming-of-age journey. It also showed that animation can be more innovative, expressive, and emotionally resonant than live action, pushing the boundaries of what superhero storytelling can look and feel like.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel that somehow surpassed the original, a breathtaking, dizzying, visually overwhelming masterpiece. Directed by the trio of Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson, Across the Spider-Verse expands the multiverse to infinity, introducing hundreds of spider people from countless dimensions. The animation is even more experimental, blending hand-drawn styles, watercolors, and comic book panels into a kaleidoscopic experience that pushes the medium forward.
Miles Morales is now more confident as Spider-Man, but he struggles to balance his double life with his parents' expectations. When he reunites with Gwen Stacy, he's pulled into a multiversal chase involving the villainous Spot, a scientist-turned-living portal who threatens to destroy all realities. But the real conflict comes when Miles discovers a devastating truth about his own existence. He was never supposed to be Spider-Man, and his very existence is an anomaly that threatens the multiverse. Why it's essential to this evolution? This film takes the multiverse concept to its logical extreme, exploring identity, destiny, and belonging. It proves that superhero stories can tackle profound philosophical questions while delivering jaw-dropping action. It also sets up a thrilling conclusion that promises to redefine what it means to be Spider-Man, and cements Miles Morales as arguably the most important Spider-Man of the modern era.
The future of Spider-Man. And here we are, the next chapter is finally here. Spider-Man Brand New Day swanged into theaters on July 30th, 2026, marking Tom Holland's fourth solo outing as the Wallcrawler. Directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, this film picks up 4 years after the devastating events of No Way Home. Peter Parker is now an adult, living completely alone, erased from the memories of everyone he loved, including MJ, Zendaya, and Ned, Jacob Batalon. He's a full-time Spider-Man, thriving as a hero, but Peter Parker is at the darkest chapter of his life, actively ignoring the lesson he learned from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. With a stacked cast including John Bernthal, The Punisher, Mark Ruffalo, Bruce Banner Hulk, and newcomer Sadie Sink, Brand New Day promises a grounded, grittier tonal shift. Think street-level crime and a New York that doesn't know his name.
Beyond Brand New Day, the future of Spider-Man is wide open. A live-action Miles Morales feels inevitable after the Spider-Verse films made him a household name, and Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse will conclude Miles' animated trilogy.
Sony's expanding universe, Venom, Craven, Madam Web, continues to grow, though its connection to the MCU remains unclear. One thing's certain, Spider-Man isn't going anywhere. He's the most enduring, adaptable, and beloved superhero in cinema, and each era, including Brand New Day, teaches us something new about what makes him great. The future, it's wide open, and we can't wait to see where he lands next.
Please like, share and subscribe for more such videos. Thank you for watching.